There truly has never been a better time to be a fan of LoL esports. I mean, even just today, okay, we got one of the best feel good stories of the year if you hate corporate greed, where the D Plus volunteers were able to beat Carmine Corp 3-0 in the finals of unfortunately a Blood Money Cup in the EWC. However, if you were going to take that money and put it to somewhere that would be fairly useful, it would be to players who are not getting paid because their organization has no money and are trying to sell the org. But until then, the players aren't getting a paycheck. So I hope for Showmaker and Beyond's case that everybody at D Plus Kia, I hope they get the majority cut of this prize pool, the $600,000 that they will walk away with as a result of winning EWC. But more importantly, I hope they get that money in less than a month and a half because, dear God, dude, time to catch up on some paychecks. Oh my lord. But the reason this video is titled "It's the Best Time to Watch LoL Esports" is because during MSI, head of LoL Esports Chris Greeley sat down for his interview that he does at every international event. He picks an outlet. This time it's rft.gg. They get to ask a bunch of questions, and we learn a little bit about the current macroeconomic state of LoL esports beyond just the product that we see on the Rift. And with Travis Gaffer not in the space anymore, so most people probably don't see that conversation via interview form, I want to talk about it here in this. Plus, it just genuinely excites me. And I promised I would make a video on it, and I need to get this out before my interview with David Hahn tomorrow since we kick off domestic coverage in just 24 hours. So if you haven't done so already, be sure to hit that like button, hit that subscribe button. We're close to 10K, and let's get into this. Reason number one, it's a fantastic time to be a fan of League is because we are no longer trapped in the old days where it was, hey, you're going to play all your games in the domestic studio. You are then going to go on a road trip for finals, or at least like 3 or 4 years ago, that was down to one road trip per region sometimes. And there were no third-party events. Now, granted, some third-party events are a little bit lower stakes than others. Think of it's the Korean Cup in the off season. I'm forgetting that was on Disney Plus this past year. Caspa Cup. Dear God, that took me way too long to think about. You have the Esports Nations Cup making its debut this year, where you're having different nations and players from each independent country competing off against each other. You have the Esports World Cup. Unfortunately, both of those sports washing, but at this point, like, you can't remove the money from it. I know people have a problem with that, as seen in some of the shorts. That's fine. Nothing I can do about it. I'm still going to talk about it. But the big thing that has started to happen is the return of road trips, which we've all seen and loved over the last 2 years, where various different teams can host events themselves for a week of domestic play. It adds at least some sort of stakes to a regular season that would otherwise be very boring, because we are in a period now of LoL esports where it's like, okay, we get 3 splits. Regular season feels fairly monotonous at this point. It's not like it's a limited product like the NFL and beyond, where you only have a few weeks of play that all, consolidate down pretty quick. The home grounds have been a fantastic touch, and they're a great way to build fandom. So I agree with Chris Greeley on this one. 100%. Fantastic thing to be in esports that is very reminiscent of the old days. Speaking of the old days, though, I know many people were hoping that franchising would go away, especially with Valorant kind of getting rid of it. Like, they still have partnered teams, but they just start further on in an open bracket, which then feeds into tournaments from there. Like, tier 2 teams, there's no restrictions, there's no blockage of rights. Like, anybody can just go in and play and form a team and eventually work your way up. That's the beauty of it. Now, North America has promotion relegation with one spot, but it's not working out well. But there is one thing that I do want to highlight within this passage. Chris said, we made a bunch of changes to the LCS. Not all of them were great, obviously. Many of them were not great. Knowing what we know now, maybe we go back and change some of those decisions, but ultimately we want to keep evaluating our regional leagues independently. I don't think you'll ever see us come in and say partnerships are going everywhere. We're buying everybody out and restarting the ecosystem. I never assumed that they were going to press restart on the ecosystem, but I did think there was a possibility of at least buying a few slots within the leagues that would be Riot controlled and give out long-term partnerships similar to what they've done for Sentinels. The fact that that's not coming, this one I'm not quite certain about, and I'd be curious to know your opinion on how you feel about the calendar year of LoL esports, because coming from a traditional fan, I value having time off that makes you appreciate what you've got going on. And from a content creator front, I will be straight up honest with you that I am biased on this, okay? Because whenever the LCS regular season is going on, I have an obligation to be here every weekend to make sure that I'm co-streaming, creating content, partially because I want to be, and that's the dedication that you put into this craft if you want to be in the space and industry. But you look at other sports, you look at other industries, and there is this extended off season that allows you to have a break and just reset. Not only from a content creator point of view, but also from a player point of view. They are doing this 5 days a week. I'm only doing it part-time. You don't have to look any further than the last month and a half, so to speak, of MSI coming straight off of domestic finals, going straight into the Esports World Cup. It is a packed schedule that for the Esports World Cup, like very clearly, there's a separation in the tier of events, which means you have a lot of people trying to say, okay, well, this tournament doesn't matter, even if it matters a lot to D plus Kia fans and the Carmine Corp fans, understandably, who make it to an international final. Regardless of the weight, they still make it to a final and beat T1 in a best of 3. That's pretty massive, and I don't think there's any point taking that away from anybody. But the calendar year definitely is a bit bloated, for sure, which I get. Esports is kind of an always on thing. Look, coming from Call of Duty, we have almost too many months of off season, but I feel like there's a better balance to be had. But it's impossible to strike within League right now because you have to balance these domestic leagues and international play and beyond. So we have not figured out the right system, in my opinion. And that's seen in viewership, because the viewership for regular season drops off a cliff pretty heavily. And I'd be curious to know if you consolidated it down a little bit and had these breaks and, properly spaced everything out a little bit more. Would that increase viewership? Would that increase retention, or would people just go away? I don't know. Like, you wouldn't know unless it actually happens, but time will tell. I mean, we don't have a month off before Worlds anymore, or even like 3 weeks off before MSI. Domestic play wraps up and it's a week and a half and you're immediately going into that event. Like, the downtime has just evaporated from the space. And now we're consolidating weeks within tournaments too. I mean, I'm not complaining about Worlds having less time between quarterfinals, semifinals, and finals. That I think is a decent change. However, there is something to be said about giving yourself time to build up narratives and conversations and beyond. But if you're a fan of more games of League of Legends, like you just want to see the most amount of League possible being played, then it's a good time for you. I hope you just don't have a life outside of League, because oh God, it's a lot if you want to follow all the regions, let alone just picking one. The bulk of the criticism that I have of this article for both Chris, for LoL Esports in general, and like the one trade-off that I think we are currently trying to figure out still is the tier 2 ecosystem that we have here in League of Legends. Because you've seen LCK owners like Arnold and Joe Marsh talk about the pipeline of upcoming talent being thinner than it's been before. You have LEC owners and LCS owners saying that there's no domestic talent that's going to be filling in these gaps, at least at the caliber that it once was. And that's mostly because less and less people are playing League of Legends. There's no denying that. Our systems underneath that garner interest in the game for younger generations, it's just not there. League has grown into a behemoth that we haven't been able to figure out how to get the younger generations in. Maybe that is scaling the game back. I don't know. We'll find that out with League next. I want to save that conversation for later. But in terms of the one particular sentence in this article that just rubs me the wrong way a little bit is, and I quote, "The overall issue with tier 2 is that it's hard to attract money into that ecosystem. Why support a tier 2 ecosystem when I can support a tier 1 ecosystem?" is what I've heard a lot. I've heard that as well. I've also voiced that opinion. And this blends into the last conversation of, bro, I've only got so much time in my life. If you're expecting me to follow the LCS and internationals, and then you also want me to watch NACL as well, no, I'm not. Of course, these leagues are not going to have viewership. Tier 2 is not supposed to, unless it's like a content creator playground or there's players that are particularly popular within that ecosystem. Think K-Corp and Los Ratones before they joined Tier 1. My issue with this is that it shows a fundamental lack of understanding of what these leagues should be, which is they should be subsidized by the LCS and the Tier 1 leagues themselves, because they directly benefit from seeing more young talent being fed into the pro pipeline. They need to have that. And when the teams don't have the money anymore to support academy teams, even if they wanted to and should, which some could and hopefully will, it's not in the best interest of the viewer for us to watch this. Like, we're already struggling to get people to tune into the LCS. I'll touch on that here in a second, versus the LCK. So, like, why would I then tune into the NACL? I get it's the future of the region, but I only have so much time. Viewership shouldn't matter. Money and sponsors shouldn't matter for this league, because it should be paid for by tier 1. It should be a cut of your budget every year to make sure that new talent gets a chance to come through and shine and show themselves. So that, I think, is a lack of understanding, but I also get that there's not all that much money. Like, we're barely about to be break even, according to John Needham in a separate interview. On the Riot side of LoL Esports, not even the team side. So I get there's not much money to be had here. A lot of conversations around failed partnerships, media rights, and beyond, which for those of you that always say media rights, it's not possible. Nobody's paying for media rights for LoL Esports right now. Nobody needs it. Outside of Korea. Korea is an exception, not the norm. In North America, it ain't happening. But yeah, these tier 2 systems need to be funded by the main league. And it's just not. They're already outsourcing the production and beyond elsewhere, which overall I'm fine with. I'm also fine with it being an online-only product, but you have to have consistent tournaments and beyond. I just don't think they're having. I think tier 2 is in a lot of trouble in North America, to the point where, look, I'd be fine if you folded up America into like a qualification into a EMEA Masters. Like, there should be one global tier 2 tournament that is like a mini, like a amateur worlds in some way, or some naming convention that brings everybody together, at least maybe for the West. Like, even if you separate the East from the West, because the East will be a little bit better and we don't need a replication of that, give the best tier 2 teams in Europe and North America and beyond, just put them all in EMEA, or EMENA, whatever you want to call it. Other things within the article, they talked about right of first side selection, which for those of you that don't know or haven't been paying attention, it was the decoupling. Like, blue side is not always first pick. I think that's been a success so far. Coaching comms have not officially happened yet. One thing I will shout out from EWC that happened was there was a lot of in-game, like live pro play camera, or like pro view, that happened in some of these fights where they track an ADC throughout a major team fight, and it was so much fun to watch. I hope that makes its way into the like normal broadcast that we have here. This is why third-party tournaments are really beneficial, because they'll be willing to try some more things that could be interesting, and they could bleed their way over into tier 1. Fantastic change, loved it. And finally, going into domestic play, I hate to start this week off kind of like this, but it's the topic of the interview and the conversation. It is a fantastic time to be a league fan for many people, unless you are somebody that watches the LCS viewership number and tracks it, of which is a very daunting subject. Because Riot acknowledges in their own article, Chris Greeley says, and I quote, "What we've seen, interestingly, isn't that fans have stopped watching. They've just stopped watching the LCS. They're watching the LCK, the LPL, and the LEC. We can chart where a lot of that's from via survey work. We've just rediverted their fandom into other places." He calls out the Doomer loop immediately afterwards, which, hey, I'm not going to sit here and deny that I'm not a part of. Like, I've had a lot of issues with decisions that are being made. And the biggest one that I will continue to say, not to make this Doomer, but I will continue to push for the change here, is that I think you really need to push the Northeast side of in-person fandom more. Like, we are seeing the results of success in Paris, in France, in Spain, for teams having local identities, and the teams really pushing their influence on local culture there. I mean, just this week alone, you had EWC in Paris, and now you have a K-Corp road trip literally this week. So, like, Paris fans are eating it up. Like, they're just living their best life, where they have multiple events that they can go to each and every year. For North America, it's like, okay, we have LA sometimes when we're not in the closet. You have Arizona, and then you have Georgia. You have not touched Philadelphia, New York, Boston, DC, Baltimore, like all these areas in the Northeast. What do we have? We have one World's Finals with 20,000 tickets, which people are going to be fighting over, and that's it. That's crazy. Like, I'm sorry, but you're not doing enough in that case. You are seeing what works in other regions. Like, people are telling you if they want to watch the best competition, they will go to watch the LCK. If they want to watch entertaining storylines, they will go to the LEC, because that is more fun to watch in terms of a Western English-speaking product than the LCS is. You need to find a way to get people to care about us. And when the players aren't naturally going to have that charismatic energy that older generations had, in my opinion, you really got to dip into the local side of fandom, which is host an event here in New York every year. Make it a spectacle that people around the world want to watch, but also that we could easily sell out. I just went golfing and had lunch yesterday with a bunch of League fans, and our waitress was unironically also a League fan. We were talking about Seraphine jungle builds, but the conversation got brought up around like, okay, World Finals tickets are going to be a problem, but if we had an event here every year, how much do you think we could sell out? And the answer was, oh, any arena. Like, yes, MSG and Barclay would be a little bit presumptuous, but like 5,000? No, we could do that with ease, because Valorant's coming here for their Red Bull home ground, similar to what happens with Red Bull League of its own over in Europe. And that sells out the Hammerstein Ballroom, which is about 2K, no problem. And League's an even bigger game with an even bigger audience. Like, come on. We are missing opportunities here by not having annual events in the Northeast. You need to have something every single year that we can all go to, travel to within reasonable time, train, drive, you name it. I mean, New York's kind of the mecca that I will always push for just because it is a central hub between like Boston, Philadelphia, DC, Baltimore. Like we are right in the middle that everybody can come to us. And we're built to handle the massive capacity. But you got to start cultivating a local community because as Riot's now admitting, you haven't given people a reason to tune in to anything on the LCS front because everything, like when you break it out by individual piece, you can just find a better version of those pieces elsewhere for now. Does that mean that it's like doomed and that it's fucked? No, like absolutely not. Just because we're losing people to other regions doesn't mean that it's entirely screwed, but we have to find a way to stop the bleeding for sure, which Riot admittedly says that they have things cooking for 27, 28. We'll see what they're talking about. I don't know. But it goes to highlight the final point of all this, which is like, it's not like you have a lack of options in LoL esports. If you are a fan that wants to watch League of Legends, there is something for you here. And we're seeing that because the international viewership is incredibly stable. Okay, there's churn with everything. We are losing people every year, but we are clearly gaining enough back to offset that on the international front. And the LCK is just growing. Like the LCK's numbers are freaking crazy. So yeah, I mean, there's always something for everybody here. It truly is a great time to be a LoL esports fan and a better time than ever to get into it. It's just my job and the job of the LCS and the teams and the players and everybody else to make sure that the people that are getting into it are watching North America, especially if you're from North America. That's even more important. But anyways, that wraps up this. I just wanted to talk about this article because it's a big moment for us every year within LoL Esports. We'll have another one of these come Worlds whenever they do the press event, which I'll probably be there for because I'd imagine it's going to be in New York, and we'll see how that goes. But just wanted to thank you all again for the month and a half of coverage from MSI and beyond. It's been fun. And the last time I said this, it didn't work out in my favor because the US ended up losing in the World Cup. But oh man, today's Champ Sunday for Optic. Please, dude, the three-peat would be crazy. The beginning of a dynasty and beyond. Oh, I wish I could talk more Call of Duty, but I can't. Anyways, I'll see you tomorrow. David Hahn interview, Shopify Rebellion GM. Be there.